Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Great to see so many people here. We're just giving folk a few minutes to get in, and then we'll start. Good morning, those that have just got on. We're going to start in a few minutes. We're just waiting for folks to log in. We'll give them until 12:05, and then we'll get started. Thanks. Yeah, I see a couple of people are introducing themselves on the chat. That's really helpful because it just gives us a sense of who's in the room. So please do that. Just give us your name and where you're from. Great to have you all here. Okay, let's get started. It's 5 past. I think those that come in from now, unfortunately, going to be a little bit late. But my name's Giles Gillette. I'm the CEO of NASCEE. Lovely to have you guys all on the call. This is our second session of Tuesdays in the Trenches this year. And the theme for this first series is around leadership, and particularly women in leadership. And we're joined by a great panel of three leaders who've been in the sector a long time. We've got Tracey Chambers from Taking Care of Business, Grace Matlhape from SmartStart, and Tracy Hackland from Columba Leadership. What we've done is we're going to put their bios in the chat, so you can have a look through their bios and see what they've done and give you a sense of their background. And it will also, we've put on their links to the three organizations, so Taking Care of Business, SmartStart, and Columba, and then you can also go and have a look at what they do, so we don't take up too much time talking about that. But all three of them, the two Tracys and Grace, have been working in education for a significant amount of time and in the development sector. And so really a big welcome to the three of you. Thanks for giving us this time and an opportunity to understand your world a little bit, and for you to share with us some of the, the moments and the lessons that you've learned in leadership over the years. I think my co-host,
I'm here.
Nicole, is there. Nicole's there.
In.
Hey, Nicole,
Hi,
how's it?
everyone. I'm good, thank you. And I'm so sorry I'm late. Thank you so much for the
No,
opportunity once again.
all good. And Nicole doesn't work at NASCEE, but she's a colleague of mine. We're both doing a MPhil in inclusive innovation at the GSB in Cape Town, and she has had a lot of experience in this kind of work. And so I said, well, let's just work together on this and see if it goes anywhere. And people talk about podcasts, and so we're playing with that. But Nicole, welcome, and thank you for working, joining us on this. And I know you'll be asking some of the questions as well. I don't know if you want to intro yourself, where you're from quickly. That might be useful.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole, as Giles has said. I work at Matlhape Miller Learning, and I am the creative producer for Matlhape TV and Matlhape Playground, which are our digital offerings. So MML is now offering in fact, all of their material via the Matlhapeverse, including an AI chatbot. Yes, so I find myself in the education space, and I'm absolutely loving it. Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks, and thanks for joining us. I've done a I've set the scene, Nicole, and
Perfect.
I think let's just jump right in. The Lovedonia's put their bios in the chat, so yeah, I think let's just go for it.
Great. Tracey and Tracey, for the so that you know to whom I'm speaking, I'll just say Tracey Chambers and then Tracey for the other Tracey, if that's okay. And Grace. So I am going to start with our first question. I'm going to direct that to Grace. And please, this is a very interactive conversation, as I'm sure Giles would have said. So I might go off I might ask some follow-up questions. So we'll just keep it loose. But I wanted to know, Grace, starting with you, what motivated you to work in the education sector specifically?
Yeah, so when good day, good afternoon, everyone. When I saw this set of questions, I thought, oh my goodness, how much time do we have? Like there's a whole lifetime of reason for the choices we make, right?
Of course.
But the most immediate one is I came from an organization that was focusing on reducing risk among young people. And it's a big thing. Risk, it's not just sexual health risk, it's a big thing. I got to understand like just how the mind like tries to survive adversities over time, and that sometimes these are so stuck that by the time we meet young people and try to change things that put them at risk, it might be too late. And so I was very easily convinced to work in the early years. In particular, my focus in education is in the early years. And I was easily convinced because it felt like if we want to make any change or to enable any lasting, sustainable change in the life of a human being, the early years need a lot more focus and attention. And that, I mean, as I say, the answer is a whole lifetime of experiences of a human being. But I was convinced to work in the education space because of the potential of contributing to human capital development from the start.
Great, thanks for that, Grace. And I see both Tracys are nodding their heads quite a bit. Tracey Hackland, can I swing the question to you?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I mean, I relate so much to what Grace is saying. Just the real opportunity in the education space to contribute to human capital development it's such an enticing option. Not an easy sector to work in. Complex, huge. challenging in lots of ways, but I think the potential is just always there. And a little bit like Grace, I trained as a psychologist, and I started working with children, with families, and also just realizing how much young people, children, were having to bear the brunt of, and experiencing firsthand the importance of resilience, of young people being able to start seeing themselves, really seeing themselves, and working in systems where the adults were actually coming alongside those young people or those children and supporting them. And so, with Columba Leadership, that's exactly what we do. We work with individuals, but we're also working with schools, trying to create a much more enabling environment to really develop young people. So yeah, thanks, Nicole.
Thanks, Tracey. Tracey Chambers, could I ask the same question to you?
Yeah, well, I sort of found my way into the education sector in a roundabout way. Certainly, I'm not an educator. I'm an accountant by profession and grew up in the corporate world, and then moved into creating a social enterprise called Taking Care of Business, which works. In the early days, we worked exclusively with mothers. And in order to be part of our program, you had to be a mother with at least one dependent child. And the theory of change was, if you help a mother, you help a child, guaranteed. And then as we started, and I'm a mother myself, and I think every mother wants the best for their children. And what we were seeing working with mothers, helping them start small businesses, journeying, creating a pathway out of poverty, that they very, very clearly understood that the pathway out of poverty is quality education. And they were fighting really, really hard to get their children into the best possible education that they could afford. And we were seeing that they were spending a lot of that money moving their children outside of their community in search of better education because of the spatial inequality in South Africa. So that was really the vision. How do we bring her what she knows and wants into her community? How do we create outstanding quality so that she can give her child the wonderful foundations that of quality early learning that every child deserves? And that's really where we start to break the cycle of inequality in this country, right in the early years. So we created Grow ECD. We essentially packaged a model where a woman who had started an early learning center in the community in which these mothers lived could transform that into a high quality early learning facility that was also a viable small business, so that she could hire and pay the people that she needed to run a professional operation.
Great. A question which Giles and I've been talking about for a little while, and any three of you can jump in for this one, because I think it'll be quite a lengthy discussion, is what leadership capabilities does the education sector need most urgently today? And, I'm asking that question now because I'd really like us to unpack it. But if we think about the questions that Viwe and I asked of our panelists last week, it was like, what leadership challenges have you encountered in your career? And of course, we've got varied careers and career paths which have led us to this point, and sort of what does effective collaboration look like across government and NGOs, etc. But I think at the heart of everything is, what do we urgently need? What is missing in education, specifically in education leadership at the moment?
I can give it a try. Having told you that I actually don't see myself as someone in the education sector. And so I may be a bit judgmental or share opinions or whatever. But looking at it from the early years in particular, I think the muscle that we don't really sort of have, and many of us are sort of, we share that gap, is the muscle of collaboration. And it's so easy to say that, right? Because, it's easy to just say collaboration, and it's like, I don't know, it means so many things. It has depth, it has width, and, it also, like, it could also be superficial. And we held, in the ECD sector in particular, we held back by, while we all are working on the same problem, what holds us back is that we really do fall in love with the solutions and you should, right? It's a solution, you put a lot of effort into it. But I've myself been on a journey, a very long journey of 10 years of just trying to fall in love much deeper with the problem rather than with the solution. And so I think collaboration is that. And I think the deeper we go in it, the more we realize that the solutions we haven't found yet already exist within the sector. They might not exist within you and your sort of point, but they already exist, and that a lot of time goes to reinventing the wheel, or whatever it is that we do. And I think when I talk about it, I'm not excluding the government component of the education sector. All of us are just growing in sort of collaboration, and I think we also have a way to go in really sort of a systems approach that integrates the public system with the social impact delivery system in a seamless way. I think most of us generally have a long way to go in those two things.
Yeah, I'm happy to add my perspective. I think we need really bold leadership. I think we're settling. I think we're settling for our children. I think we don't. I think we're suffering from the African continent sickness of that. I don't think we have a deep belief, a deep held belief that our children in South Africa, in Africa, can have what any child can have in a first world country. And we are, I believe that it starts with belief. I believe that it starts with talking the talk. If our leaders believe it, if we believe it, then that's what we will strive for. That's what every parent will strive for. That's what every teacher will strive for. That's what every headmaster will strive for. It starts with setting the standard high and reaching for that standard. And it starts right from the top at government. And, we need to talk the talk, and then we'll walk the walk.
Love that.
Sure. I mean, I agree so much. I mean, just that term, Tracey, not settling. I think, we're all very busy. We're all doing a lot, often with the best intention, but it just feels like there is such grave inequality still in the system. And, people are really not being served as well as they could. It feels like there's still a lot of politics in the system. There are a lot of broken relationships all over the place. There's a lot of people not coming together. And I think whether we're talking collaboration across organizations and with government, Grace, or even whether we're talking about in a school itself, our experience is there's such a lack of unity. It's almost like people are often not having a shared purpose that they're all getting behind. So, I think a lot. I think more around really involving lots of people to show up and lead this really powerful agenda that we've got. More shared leadership, more distributed leadership, more passion, more purpose. I think a lot more around resilience, emotional wellness. I think people are carrying a lot, and I think sometimes it plays out in all sorts of negative ways in the space. So sure, you asked this question, and I feel like I could go on for days. But one of the things that I feel is such a missed opportunity is leadership, which really does help operationalize policy. We've got a lot of policy, but often our experience is the policy sits there. It's people don't always even know it, and they're certainly not coming behind and driving it. So yeah, lots to say about this.
Don't let me limit you. You know what? I think it's such a critical conversation point. And even if we spend time here in just on this facet, even, I think that that's fine, because I think it's something that does need to be unpacked. And one of my kind of follow-up questions is, or what is what does effective collaboration across NGOs, government, and funders look like in practice? So, I mean, you've highlighted, if I think about the themes which have emerged now, as collaboration, or at least fragmentation, people doing things by themselves, lack of possibly awareness or education around, as you say, Tracey Hackland, policies. They might not even be aware of it. So on a practical level, what would this effective collaboration look like, specifically across government, NGOs, and funders?
So, I spend a lot of time wondering about this because, because the lack of it is costing us quite a lot. And I think, honestly, just to follow that statement, that first statement Tracey C. mentioned, like bold leadership, I think that boldness is probably the key, right? It's really about being bold in calling out what is standing in our way. And, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand what separates us. And I'll just tell you a very, very quick story. I won't mention names or whatever. I'll tell you a story about a conversation I was having with a senior government sort of politician, not administrator, not official. And I was excited by the first child outcomes evaluation that SmartStart had done, and said, it does not require buildings. I was so excited, and I thought, here's something that can scale, and we can work on this together. And he kept quiet, and then he said to me, the Black child has been taught in shacks and under trees for a long time, and now is there opportunity to get the same quality as what the white child is getting. That goes all the way deep to what is standing in our way. I guess the policy is such an aspiration, like good intentions for big things that you want for children in South Africa. Well, we've had 30 years. And clearly, the dream we have for children and the reality of where these children are is such a big gap. It requires boldness for us to say that, to say it doesn't help for us to dream big dreams when there's no pathway from context to that dream. That's why we struggle to operationalize our policies. They're unoperationalizable often because they're not in the first place rooted in the reality of that context. And so all of us need to be bold in calling those things out and hold one another accountable so that we don't find ourselves solving symptoms. And some of well-intentioned programs end up increasing the inequality that continues to be our problem. Right now, poor children become parents of poor children. we're struggling to break that intergenerational cycle of poverty. Inequality is immobilizing us. And it's really that, I just think we can jump when there are steps that we need to be intentional in taking. And we do that in a way that, it's a social compact we agree on, and we become bold. We call it what it is called so that we can solve the problems, start dealing with the problems. I'm sure it's not the only thing, but that's the one that's my favorite problem to put a spotlight on so that we can start solving sustainably rather than solving symptoms.
Yeah, I think Grace, where I'm coming from is really about if we are talking the vision, that doesn't mean we're being naive about the vision, but in other words, we know where we're going. We know where we're going. We know that we want every child in this country, and we never ever let go of that vision. We rise one step at a time. We can't skip the steps, but we must never settle. And I think we are settling in this country. We are settling for 60 kids in a classroom. We are settling for pit latrines. We have to keep reminding ourselves that is not good enough. That is not good enough for our children. And creating that sort of level of striving, continuous striving. There are many countries who've done this. There are many, many, many examples of countries that have done this. But it started with the leadership, believing it was possible, and then not like being like a dog with a bone. It comes with, this is what we will do. This is why we will vote the money. This is why people get excited about it, because people get excited not about the problem, they get excited about the vision. Because I think the one hard thing in this sector is it's easy to get despondent. It's easy to go like, oh, the problem is so big. And if I try and eat this elephant one piece at a time, I'm going to get swallowed up by the problem. When you see countries that have put education as the number one thing, what they've been able to achieve in one generation, in 2 generations, is just incredible. And that's really where I'm coming from. We have to believe it's possible. If we stop as leadership believing it's possible, then we just get sucked into the negative vortex and go like, is it worth it? So that's what I hang on to as a leader, that it's possible. That it really is possible to give our children what they deserve.
I think every time people bring the child back into the center of their gaze, it feels like we've got more sense of alignment. We all want to see, I believe, we all want to see children thrive. And I think having, even just talking with educators, there's so many problems in the system. As you say, Tracey, people can get overwhelmed and despondent. But somehow when you bring back the conversation about the child, the person that we're actually serving, it galvanizes a huge amount of energy and fire. And I think that we need a whole lot more of that.
So, if you think about the overwhelm and you think about people's sense of agency with regards to changing the system, I'm going a little bit off script, but what would that look like? One of the questions that we have is, what leadership challenges have you encountered in your career? And if we even ask that question, there are micro challenges, of course, especially coming with being a female leader, which I would like to talk about. But even as an educator, a parent, somebody that's not in a government level, how would we practically go about demanding more if we don't want to accept pit latrines and 60 kids in a classroom? I mean, practically, what are we supposed to do about that? What are the avenues? We sit around the table here, or at least the three of you, as very as strong women who kind of know the way to the top, if I can put it that way. I don't know that is commonplace for many people.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I mean, how far back do you go? Like you have to start somewhere. Again, my entry point is the early years, and that feels like the opportunity to build anew, to create a different expectations. And I think it's not small that I said somewhere before that education seems to educate children away from their communities. I think it's not a small thing that the power dynamics in education, particularly in this environment in South Africa's chronic inequality that exists. Inequality, depending on where you are on that spectrum, leaves a huge chunk of parents feeling helpless, feeling like the education systems knows better. So they're not really sort of in touch with their own agency. And I say this with the greatest humility because I have met some powerhouses of human beings that if they had an opportunity to stand in front of the system that does not seem to see them, they would, they'd find their voice. And so, I mean, I think that's the thing. You have a system that's broken that we really do need to call out the elements of the brokenness so that we at least try and make sure that the early years is an opportunity to rebuild anew. And, I call out this round of your question, the inherent power imbalance that takes the voice of a parent, that the parent does not feel confident enough for a big proportion of South Africa's children to put up, to challenge a system that tells her or him that it knows more. It's experts driven. Education is a source of power. A lot of the parents of the children we are educating don't have that education. So they don't feel an equal partnership with the system, to question it, to tell it, this is how I want my children to be educated. This is what's important in us shaping an education for the future of the children that are mine, that I'm contributing to this country to build its economy. So, I mean, I guess, that's why I looked at these questions and what these people think we have 4 hours or something. Because you are talking about world peace here or solving world hunger. It's not small things you are asking us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that sense of agency, Grace, you're speaking about parents, but I would say the same applies to many, many educators in the system. There are some incredible people there, passionate, doing what I think few of us will do, grappling with incredibly difficult circumstances. And I think what we've experienced sometimes is just when people have a bit of a platform, a bit of a space to actually raise their voices, to step up, not get shot down, not just kind of buckle under compliance-driven system. When they actually are allowed to start dreaming, start exerting some kind of authority, taking ownership of a classroom. I mean, it's just incredible the kind of energy that gets released there.
Great. I'm going to ask you, just because of the nature of the panelists in this discussion, let's start with Tracey Chambers. What leadership challenges have you encountered in your career, and what advice, I'm going to put the two questions in one, would you give to young women starting their careers in education and or social impact?
How long is the list? You know, as a woman in my early years as a leader, actually, I'm going to talk about when in the education sector, because I came to the education sector not as an educator, and I think that's quite a tough one, because educators are quite protective of their sector, and so who are you? Who are you to come into this sector? What do you know? And I wasn't coming in as an academic. I was coming in as with a systems change lens, you know, which the two can go together. So for many years, I've been our education arm of taking care of business, as in Grow ECD, has been operating for 12 years. For many years, I did not speak up. I found working in the ECD sector the hardest sector that I've ever had to work in. Wow. Okay, because of the dynamics, of the organizations, of the people, of government who, you know, most of those years were under DSD, and I didn't feel that they really cared about the education of children. Their job was protection. And so I felt like I was fighting a system silently. I could see that the system was sick actually, that no matter how good the solution you could bring to the system, it was like walking through cement, and it was absolutely exhausting. And I could see that many others were exhausted by the system, but maybe none of us were bold enough. I think Grace said it. We have to be bold enough to say, hey, something's wrong here. And I'm part of that problem. But I actually want to build a better system. I want to build a system that has like a flow state. I felt like our system did not have a flow state. We were fighting government, or we were fighting for territory, or we were fighting amongst each other. We were building the same assets. It was just crazy. And I made a decision, I think about 2 years ago, to say, if I'm going to work in this sector, then I need to be part of the solution. And that means I have to speak up. I have to speak up about my own experiences, my own lived experiences, and say that this isn't right. There's something not right here. And I had to do that knowing that I wasn't an educator. So my sort of imposter syndrome had to be put aside to say, I have something valuable to say.
That's it.
Even though I'm not a trained educator. Yeah, and when I did that, I felt a bit free, actually. You know, like actually, and you know, more people said, hey, I feel the same. So I think being bold enough to share difficult things actually helps clear the road for good, honest, mature conversations that then lead to relationships on which you can build collaboration and cohesion in the sector. But saying nothing is the easy way out.
Agreed. I relate so much because I'm also not a teacher, or I've not worked in schools, but I think that collaboration is key. All perspectives are needed, and strengthen the ecosystem, undoubtedly so, you know. I love that. Tracey H., is there anything you'd like to add to that, especially with regards to some of the challenges you might have faced in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very similarly. You come in, you're not an educator, you're suddenly speaking into the system. You feel like there's a really important perspective that is not getting enough airtime. And yeah, finding the courage to really speak it out. I think also, I mean, the way we work, you know, relationships are really important. I think it's quite a skill. Building relationships, winning people on side. Sometimes bold leadership looks quite subtle. but it's really bold. You're kind of going into the system and you're shifting things in a way that people don't feel threatened. So that's been a big part of my journey as well.
Great. Yes, I would also like to speak for another 4 more hours on this topic, but I think we should allow our participants who have dialed into the webinar to ask some questions that they might have. And I do request to everyone online, if you do ask a question, if you could very briefly just say where you are from prior to asking the question. So is there anyone already who would like to ask a question to our panelists? Please don't include me in the panel.
Nicole, while we wait,
Yes.
can I add something? Because I mean,
Of course.
I've had a tumultuous leadership journey, like
Yes.
many women. And you know what Tracey C was talking about just then, I identified with all of that completely. And the frustration of trying to work with government in a cooperative way, in ways that we are co-creating. And I don't think that the fault is always on their side. I think the fault is sometimes on our side. And you know, the turning point, just in terms of there are also internal organizational challenges, right? We don't have enough time, as you say, you know, to go through everything. But the turning point for me, in particular with the Department of Basic Education, is feeling like now I'm working with a government department that there's no perfection. There is imperfection like everywhere, right? Like all of us.
Of course.
But now you at least are working with a government department that is solving at population level. Whereas, you know, social development, because of that welfare, and I'm judging them, I'm casting a judgment. Because of that welfare mindset, that is only some children who are in need of care. That's the whole point of welfare. There wasn't adequate population level. So you cannot change a system when you don't see the whole population as your responsibility. The system will always work against some and for some. Systems intervention require that you see the whole population. And then you're solving at source. You're not solving little, you know, symptoms of the problem you're trying to solve. And that for me have been some of my most important leadership lessons, that sometimes our own judgment of them. I mean, I was very critical of government, like they're not interested. But as Tracey H says, in the classroom, even in the sort of bureaucracy of all of the system, there are some amazing people that when you get them, you know, you can actually identify very powerful levers that can get us started on a pathway for better success, improvement, and like just shifting some of these big systemic challenges that the education sector is facing. Again, from someone who is not a trained educator, but a social impact worker in an education system.
Thanks so much for that, Grace. And there's a lovely question in the chat for all panelists. So jump in as you see fit, from Rihanna Rousseau. How do you manage your responsibilities and the tensions between strategy and board engagement and operations, human resources, and program delivery, as well as fundraising? It's a meaty question, so please do look in the chat if you need to have a look at it again. How do you manage your responsibilities between strategy and board engagement and ops and program delivery, as well as fundraising?
I mean, I would come in there and really it's about, as a leader, building an incredible team below you. If you have, I go to bed every night and I'm really grateful for the incredible team I have in my organization, who do not rely on me to run the operations. They rely on me to lead the strategy, have the uncomfortable conversations if you need to have uncomfortable conversations at board level, and manage that layer so that they can carry on doing what they do. And when you have incredible leaders in those positions, your job becomes really easy. When you have the wrong person in the wrong seat who doesn't align to the vision or align to the value, that's really when your problems start. And you have to act swiftly and deal with that, because that middle layer, that layer there, is so critical to you being effective. From a funder point of view, I think probably everybody who's in the NGO sector will say that they hate the fundraising part the most. We came to do this work because we're passionate about the work that we do. And fundraising is necessary in order for us to do the work that we love to do. And we do often spend a disproportionate amount of our time on fundraising, which, you know, isn't our first love in many cases. So, but I think if you know why you do it, you make the time to do it. And it is not an event. It is an ongoing, daily relationship building process. It is not about filling in a grant agreement. You are fundraising every single day, whether it's telling your impact story or on this call. We are fundraising by actually being able to, you know, inspire others with the vision that our particular organization is hoping to achieve. And I have found in my finding the right funder or pushing funders away when you know they are not the right funder. Same as employees. If you get the wrong employee in the wrong job, if you get the wrong funder in your organization who wants to fund their strategy and not your strategy, that creates tension, and you need to be bold and brave to say, this is not the place for you, even if you need the money, because it'll cause more pain in the long run for you. Yeah, so I think it all comes down to humans at the end of the day. If you find the right humans that are aligned to your vision and values, your system is smooth. If you have the opposite of that, your system becomes stuck and can become toxic.
Yeah, I can identify with that. I mean, talent really, truly, you know, like not settling. I'm going to keep using the words that have already been thrown around. Not settling for only what we can afford, and really settling for the best talent for the job that needs doing. You know, so on the fundraising, to be honest, one of the things I identified early on is that part of the brokenness of the system in the early years, in particular, the ECD component, is sometimes driven by the fact that ECD is so hugely, grossly underfunded. And impact organizations that are the biggest enablers of ECD in South Africa right now, and honestly, the Department of Education is fortunate that there's that network, because they are the ones that are helping to whatever we are achieving, even though our country index shows that a lot of children are just not developmentally on track. Fundraising became like fundraising in the traditional sense it's traumatic in South Africa. So very early on, I realized that it doesn't help. If you want to change the system, I should work outside of the South African funding system and rather focus on building global, so like increasing the purse for the ECD system in South Africa. So I spent an inordinate amount of time, unfortunately at my expense, looking for funders outside of South Africa in order to reduce the friction inside South Africa in search of funding, because all that happens is a funder will move money from this one to another one. And so that's not, like, that does not solve the system you know what I mean? It's like just shifting, like just moving here, there. And it just increases the friction much more. We hate each other instead of working together because we perceive that we are competing for funding. And that is one of the things that needed healing in the system. It's still not healed. That's why in SmartStart, I was, and I mean, the questions, the things you raise about boards, you just don't have time to answer all of those questions. But leadership is when you can, at least for me, it's when you can actually sort of understand the part of the system that you can impact and try and impact it. As Tracey H was saying, it doesn't mean that in all of those things, it's like sort of outward, like, some of the leadership is when you are you recede on some things and you go forward on others. That's just how I have handled it. If it were not for the incredible team that I've built over the years in SmartStart, of people who know more about education than I do, who know more about finances than I do, who know more about, like, whatever they bring, they are the expert, and we share vision and we continue to align on how we work, move towards that vision. Those are the main enablers, and without that, gosh, yeah, I don't know whether, most of us would just not stand, right, not long enough.
Yeah, I agree with so much of that. I mean, Rihanna, I have to say it does take some stamina, some fitness. I think just that capacity to focus narrowly and then become aware much more broadly, that, shifting of attentional focus all the time. But yeah, this is a team sport. I mean, even our fundraising, it's a team that gets behind it. Even for those people that carry fundraiser next to the title, everybody's involved actually, and they understand that they are. And linking with Tracey, I mean, a huge amount of the work is actually in investing in the talent in an organization and growing that talent. So next to HR, there's a big thing about talent management, succession, planning, etc., etc.
I wonder if I'm going to open up a hole to our conversation in my closing question, which is, are there any last kind of thoughts around being a female in this space? The three of you speak about leading large teams. Are there any distinct advantages, disadvantages, in not a disadvantage to being a woman, but just unique challenges that you have faced as a woman in a leadership position? And maybe some bullet point advice you might give to other women entering into the similar spaces.
Sure. I think mentoring, coaching, having a network of peers that are kind of in a similar space can prove hugely helpful. When I started in Columba, it was a very male-dominated environment, actually. And I actually found it really difficult initially. I kind of did the female thing, kind of much more receptive, etc. And I mean, part of my own self-leadership journey was lean in. What you're bringing here is a different perspective, and it's much needed.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can only say yes, I agree completely. I mean, I think for me, part of it is, I did go through a journey where, I was working in an environment where I felt under pressure to be wearing black suits and like high heels. When I came into education, actually, when I came into SmartStart, I ditched the high heels and I started to wear jeans and T-shirts everywhere. That for me was my own sort of resistance, because organizations, even organizations that are women-led, they sort of maintain this masculine hopefully capacity of leadership, and that means you must be angry and you must be like hold back on vulnerability and so on. And as Tracey Chambers was talking about leaning in, a friend sent me Brené Brown's one of the books. I've just read many of them. And the unlock is the courage to be vulnerable, to not always know, and to actually build a culture within an organization where people feel like they don't always have to know, but have the courage to ask for help when you need it, and connecting with others, CEOs, and just talking about what's common and maybe not common in our challenges with one another. But I mean, again, try and not make this a 2-hour conversation. I mean, there could be much more. But for me, it's like the courage to be vulnerable, to without reducing your expectations for excellence. You set standard that excellence, it doesn't, you don't have a right to not be excellent, while you are kind and are also able to say, I don't know, and suggest a book or a friend or something.
Yeah.
I think, I've had various companies in which I've been, and starting with when I did my articles, when in those days, women CAs were very rare, and there were only 2 women in our entire sort of articles year of about 60 people. And I think the most important thing is not whether it's a male-dominated or a female-dominated environment. It's whether the values align with your own values. And so value-centered organizations, when the culture is there and when the culture is not there. And I think male-dominated environments can be exclusionary, and female-dominated environments can be exclusionary. And you have to find your tribe, and your tribe, you'll know when you found your tribe when it feels like home, and the values appeal to your own personal values. And I think as women, you can thrive in a male-dominated environment if those values are present. And as a man, you can thrive in a female-dominated environment. The very humanness of just being, valuing the human that they are. And I've been fortunate that most of the organizations that I've found in my career have aligned with my values, but I know that I wouldn't stay. I wouldn't stay in an organization to fight the values and the culture that it has created. And as the leader, you are responsible for creating that culture.
Yeah.
It's very hard if you're coming into as a woman in a male-dominated macho environment, you're unlikely to change that culture. It has to start from the top. It has to start with the leaders wanting it to be a different culture. So, trusting your gut, and saying this environment is not for me, this environment is not serving me, and voting with your feet. I think is the most important thing of leadership. You want to be in a place where you are valued for the very person who you are uniquely.
Absolutely. Oh, we've got such a great question from Hetty, but unfortunately we are out of time. Thank you so much to our panelists, and I'm just going to hand over to Giles to wrap up. I've had a wonderful time with you ladies. Thank you so much for giving so generously, but over to you, Giles.
Thanks, Nicole, and thank you to all 3 of you for this time. Like a real privilege to listen to your insights. I think it's been quite challenging as well for us to internalize this concept of boldness, vulnerability, and collaboration, and how those 3 things play out. As for any leader. You know, because sometimes being bold can be create friction around collaboration, and it's scary to, you know, to step out and be vulnerable in your boldness. So certainly given me something to think about, and a real privilege. And thank you to everyone who came onto the call. I hope you, and I'm sure you took some real value out of this. So to the three women that shared, and to Nicole for holding the ship. Viwe will be back. I was very sad that she missed this, but she'll be back to do what I'm doing next week, or I think it is next week, and we'll have another series. But to everyone, thank you very, very much. This has been very rich and insightful. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Great, super. Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Carry on.